Jonas Reed had seen stranger things in his 30 years wandering the outer rim, but a dragon hatchling crying over a broken toy spaceship was definitely in the top 5. The salvage station on Epsilon 7 was supposed to be his quiet retirement gig. Fix broken equipment, patch up mining drones, maybe weld a hull or two. Nobody mentioned anything about dragons when he signed the contract. Then again, nobody mentioned much of anything. The Galactic Council liked to keep humans in the dark about the wider universe's politics. "Please, Mr. Jonas?" The tiny voice wobbled with desperation. Jonas looked down at the creature no bigger than a house cat, her iridescent scales shimmering between violet and gold in the station's harsh lighting. Vira clutched the mangled remains of what had once been a miniature star cruiser, tears pooling in her enormous amber eyes. "Kid, I fix industrial machinery, not toys," Jonas said, but his resolve was already crumbling. Something about those eyes reminded him of his niece back on Earth. "But you fix everything," Vira insisted, her small wings drooping. "Mother says humans can repair anything. She says your kind sees problems differently." Jonas scratched his beard, considering the toy was a genuine draconian artifact, probably worth more than his entire year's salary. Intricate crystalline circuits ran through its structure, powered by what looked like miniaturized plasma cores. Whoever built this understood technology on a level that made human engineering look like stone tools. "All right," he sighed. "Let's see what we can do." Vira's entire demeanor transformed. Her wings perked up, and she released a little puff of what might have been smoke or might have been pure joy. She carefully placed the broken cruiser on Jonas's workbench, then scrambled up to sit on a toolbox, watching him with intense focus. Jonas activated his magnification visor and began examining the damage. The toy had been stepped on, probably by one of the adult draconians who ran the station. The crystalline matrix was shattered, the plasma containment field was leaking, and the microgravity stabilizers were completely shot. "This is going to take a while," he muttered. "I can wait," Vira said immediately. "I'm very patient." She was not patient. Within 5 minutes, she was asking questions. "What's that tool called?" "Plasma welder." "Why is it blue?" "Because that's the color of the arc when it hits this particular frequency." "What's a frequency?" Jonas found himself explaining fundamental physics to a dragon hatchling while simultaneously rewiring circuits smaller than a grain of rice. Strangely, it helped him focus. Vira's questions forced him to think about each step, to articulate his process in ways that revealed solutions he might have otherwise missed. Hours passed. The station's artificial day-night cycle shifted to evening mode, bathing the workshop in amber light. Vira had fallen asleep on the toolbox, tiny snores escaping her snout. Jonas kept working, now invested in the challenge. The draconian technology was incredible, but it was also rigid. Every component was perfectly designed, but there was no room for adaptation or improvisation. When something broke, it broke completely. Human engineering was different. Humans built things that could be fixed, modified, and improved with whatever materials were on hand. Jonas replaced the shattered crystalline matrix with a hybrid system, using salvaged Earth-tech processors bridged with draconian energy conduits. He fabricated new stabilizers from spare drone parts, calibrating them to work with the alien propulsion system. Where the original design had been elegant but fragile, Jonas's repairs were ugly but robust. "Vira," he said softly, shaking the hatchling awake. "Want to see if it works?" She jerked upright, eyes wide. Jonas placed the repaired cruiser on a clear section of floor and activated the remote control he'd jury-rigged from spare parts. The toy hummed to life, its engines glowed with a steady light, and it lifted smoothly into the air, executing a perfect loop before landing gently in Vira's outstretched claws. "You fixed it," she shrieked, launching herself at Jonas in a tackle hug that nearly knocked him off his stool. "You fixed it better. Look, it flies smoother now. And the lights are brighter. And, glad you like it, kid," Jonas chuckled, patting her head between the tiny horns. Over the following months, Vira became a regular fixture in Jonas's workshop. She brought him other broken things: data pads that wouldn't sync, environmental suits with torn seals, even a malfunctioning translation device that had the entire diplomatic corps baffled. Each time, Jonas found a way to make it work, often improving on the original design through sheer human stubbornness and creative problem-solving. Vyra watched everything, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. She learned to hand him tools before he asked for them, to predict which approach he'd take for each problem. More importantly, she learned to see technology not as sacred and untouchable, but as something that could be understood, modified, and mastered. "Why do humans think so differently?" she asked one day while Jonas was elbow-deep in a malfunctioning airlock. "We had to," Jonas replied. "We didn't have fancy tech handed to us. We built everything from scratch, made mistakes, learned from them. When something broke, we couldn't just replace it. We had to figure out how to fix it with whatever we had lying around." That sounds hard. It was, still is. But it taught us that there's always another way. Always another solution. You just have to be willing to look for it. Vyra nodded solemnly, filing that lesson away with all the others. Jonas never learned that Vyra was the hatchling of the Empress, hidden on a remote station for her own protection during turbulent political times. He never knew that every toy he fixed, every lesson he taught, was shaping the mind of someone who would one day command fleets that spanned galaxies. Years later, when the swarm invaded council space with their planet-killing bioships, when every advanced civilization fell back in terror before technology they couldn't comprehend or counter, Empress Vyra stood before her war council with scales that shimmered violet and gold. "The swarm ships are organic," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "They can't be hacked. They can't be predicted by our tactical algorithms. They adapt to every strategy we throw at them." "Then we are doomed, Majesty," an admiral said quietly. Vyra's eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement, might have been determination. "No," she said. "We need to think differently. We need to think like humans. We need to improvise." She pulled up a hologram of a modified warship, its elegant draconian lines augmented with brutal, asymmetric human technology. "There's always another way," Vyra said softly, remembering an old human in a cluttered workshop. "Always another solution. You just have to be willing to look for it." The Draconian Empire survived the swarm, barely. But it survived because an empress remembered the lessons learned from a toymaker who never knew he was teaching the future ruler of a civilization that spanned 1,000 worlds. And in her private quarters, on a shelf of priceless artifacts and gifts from 100 species, sat a small toy star cruiser, its hull scarred with makeshift repairs, still flying perfectly after all these years.